MIPCOM is truly the most global market, as you say. There are 111 countries right now, and that could well keep on growing as the week goes on. So we have some new pavilions. We have, I think, when I say 111 countries, I think it's just such an incredible reflection of, the power of the global industry. We've always talked about how, content can come from anywhere, never been more important. So we're expecting a big buzzy market. We've got, I think we like to say it's kind of everyone we believe should be here is here. It really does reflect the global industry. So yeah, we think we're going to have an incredibly busy time here.
Fantastic. Lucy, thank you so much. I know you've got lots going on, lots of people pulling in different directions and lots of things to do on stage as well. Thanks for joining us. All the best for MIPCOM 2024.
Thank you very much, Justin. And I wish you all the best of luck with this amazing podcast. It's good.
Thank you.
Good luck with telecast.
Thank you. Well, lots to look forward to here in Cannes, and we'll see you tonight at the big opening party. Now, of course, MIPCOM is a huge launch platform for new TV shows. The world's biggest distributors are all here vying for the attention of TV programme buyers from hundreds of countries, each of whom are in Cannes to shape what viewers will see on their screens over the next few years. But these days, it's not just about making the most entertaining TV shows for audiences. Networks are also starting to look for ways to share messages of sustainability and educate viewers on how we can take better care of our planet. One such show that combines entertainment with a sustainability message is our MIPCOM Hot Pick, Shark Celebrity Infested Waters, produced by Plimsoll Productions and distributed by ITV Studios. I was joined in our London studio by Karen Plum, Head of Factual Entertainment at Plimsoll, to hear more. Hello and welcome to our MIPCOM Hot Pick feature with ITV Studios. And today we're exploring the world of factual entertainment with a special guest from Plimsoll Productions. Joining me is Karen Plum, Head of Factual Entertainment, here to talk about Shark, Celebrity Infested Waters, a brand new series making its debut at MIPCOM that blends compelling natural history and adrenaline-fueled entertainment. This ambitious format takes ocean-phobic celebrities to the Bahamas to face off with some of the Pacific's most terrifying predators, all while shedding a new light on the vital role sharks play in our ecosystems. Karen, thanks for joining us today. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. It's a pleasure to join you.
Yeah, well, amazing show that we're going to be talking about now that you're in development and I know you're going to be in production very shortly. First of all, tell us about the concept of Shark Celebrity Infested Waters.
What makes this show so special is it brings a brand new audience to wildlife programming. So many of these great shows that Plimsoll Production makes and is well known for have a ready-made audience, but we're preaching to the converted with that. What we wanted to do is bring entertainment to this genre and bring a whole new audience. The 9 o'clock ITV audience don't naturally turn to wildlife. So we sat in a room, we thought, how can we do this? And we created Shark Celeb Infested Waters, which is a big, bold, ambitious reality format where we take an ensemble cast of celebrities and we put them cage-free into the water with sharks. But this isn't just entertainment for entertainment's sake. It's got a conservation purpose at its heart, which is getting people to understand that sharks have so much more to fear from us than we do from them. But we're going to make it entertaining so that people watch from the beginning right to the end.
So how did it come about then? How did this show concept, because it's a brilliant concept.
It came about because, it's quite a difficult market at the moment. And we were just looking at what's our USP, what can Plimsoll do that nobody else can do? Everyone's looking for bigger, bolder, fewer. And we thought, what's our bigger, bolder, fewer? And we have an amazing, one of the world's leading wildlife departments. We also have an adventure department where we take people up mountains and we do some of the most dangerous television, in the market. And then I run factual entertainment. We thought, there's something unique. No other company has as much cross-genre as that. And we thought, well, what can we do? And we said, let's do what we call Wildlife Plus or Adventure Plus. So bringing entertainment that. And we got our development team, and we locked ourselves in a room, and we thought, what can we do? And we talked around the subject, and then the most iconic animal of all came up, sharks. And then we developed a reality show around that. And it was very exciting to pitch, because people immediately you've got something exciting, an iconic animal, a production company that can do entertainment and wildlife. And we sold it really quickly, which is quite unusual in this market.
Yeah. And many factual entertainment shows coincide with an anniversary. Everybody loves an anniversary to hook a show on. And this year is the anniversary of one of the biggest shark movies ever, right?
Yeah, that was a big eureka moment in our development. We were just sort of, looking on the internet, exploring sharks. It's like, oh my goodness, 2025 is 50 years of Jaws. And that not only is an amazing anniversary for us to work with, but it's really interesting narratively, because what Jaws did for sharks was create, well, I think all of us have been terrified of sharks since the advent of Jaws, and it created an untrue narrative that sharks are man-eaters who hunt people down and eat them. And that's just not the case at all. Sharks are really short-sighted. They only ever bite by mistake, and they almost never eat people. So we're hoping not only do we coincide that, but to address that narrative and reset it.
Yeah, it's really interesting, actually, because you always see on the news when there's been a shark attack, even in Australia, right? But I imagine the incidences of people being killed or harmed by other natural animals in the wild is far more numerous than with sharks.
Yeah, I think we're all fundamentally quite petrified of sharks. It's a primordial fear. What lurks beneath the surface is always going to be scary, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think I'm right in saying that you're more likely to be killed by lightning than a shark.
Yeah.
But, that's bad for sharks, but also quite good for our programming, because we're all fascinated by these iconic animals.
Yeah, and they're an apex predator, so they have a really important role to play in the ocean ecosystem, don't they?
Yes, as I found out, I'm not a wildlife producer. We have wildlife producers working in tandem with us on this project, but up to 275 million sharks are killed by human hand a year. As an apex predator, they play a vital role in the maintenance of the marine ecosystem. And it's extremely vital that people understand that. There have been laws on stopping the terrible practice of shark fin, but bycatch, ecosystem degradation, and bycatch, overfishing, and shark fin soup have really, really dramatically reduced the numbers.
Yeah. And how do you balance this entertainment aspect then with this natural history aspect of the show?
It's always going to be entertainment first. As producers, we are in the entertainment business, and we have our celebrities who are going to put themselves through quite an extreme and very interesting process to learn to dive with some of the biggest sharks on the planet out of cages. So that will be what pull people in. Also, the beauty of sharks is undeniable. We're going to one of the most beautiful islands on the planet with some of the most crystal clear waters. We'll be diving with these incredible animals. There'll also be dolphins and reefs. So it will be visually beautiful. You've got really interesting celebrities taking themselves out of their comfort zone. And then the experts who are setting the challenge. So we've got 3 world-class experts. We've got a shark scientist, a shark conservationist, and somebody who spent their entire lives campaigning about sharks. And they will set the challenge for the celebrities. So they are shark experts, and they will bring the knowledge into the programme all the time, reminding the celebrities what they're doing and giving them information about sharks as we go along. So entertainment first, education second.
And you mentioned the Bahamas. It's specifically shot in Bimini as well, which is a beautiful place. And I have to admit, I've been there myself. Yeah. And
you've got one up on me at the moment then.
Well, it was a few years ago. You remember when NatP and Real Screen used to be sort of a couple of weeks apart. I had a layover of a week, and I was in Miami, and I thought, well, a 50-mile ferry ride, and I'm in Bimini. So I went there for a week, and it's an incredible place. extraordinary number of sharks around. I mean, it really is shark-infested waters there. Presumably, that's the reason why you chose it, right? I mean, it's just because of the number of different species that you find there.
Yeah, my wildlife colleagues have said this is pretty much the only place we could do this show, because we want to have encounters with so many different species of shark. And the Bahamas is a shark sanctuary in its entirety. And the shallow waters in the winter mean all the sharks come in. Our head of adventure has gone and done a recce. And as you said, there are an extraordinary amount of sharks. It's amazing. If you let nature be how it should be, the quantity of sharks is extraordinary. And I think there's 12 different species of shark around Bimini alone, and even more in the Bahamas. So the combination of the shallow waters, the migratory route, makes this the shark capital of the world. And also, because of that, scientists have been studying sharks there for, I think, nearly 40 years. So the sharks are habituated to humans. So everyone knows where they are and how they will behave, which makes doing something this audacious and potentially dangerous actually not that dangerous at all. Sharks recognize humans. They don't attack humans in this environment. And most of the scientists know the bigger sharks by name. Right. So it's a really good environment to operate in. And also, because Bimini is so small, as you've seen, it's just around the coast. You've got hammerheads here, you've got lemon sharks here, you've got rays here. So as a place to make a TV program in, you don't have to spend that much time travelling. You can spend all your time having the shark experiences in crystal clear waters.
Well, that's the thing that I found. That I actually went swimming off a boat and I saw a tiger shark came quite close, which was 3 times the size of me. I could see hammerheads on the seafloor, and obviously there's nurse sharks who breed in the mangrove swamps there and everything. So it's an amazing place. So beyond this sort of excitement and celebrity factor, like we say, the show's got a strong sustainability message. Are you finding that broadcasters around the world there's a demand for sustainability related shows, entertainment shows?
Yeah, I think ITV have been amazing partners on this, because we pitched it to ITV with a really strong conservation message, expecting it to be a little bit watered down as we moved into production. But they have been our partners in saying, let's keep the conservation message front and centre. And as people who, we're Plimsoll, we've been pitching and creating shows with conservation at their heart for a long time. But it just feels like everyone's stopped giving this subject lip service and is actually committing to it. So the conservation message has been a real bonus. And actually, as we look to take the format out, it's not just British broadcasters, it's Australian and French, and everyone's really picked up on the conservation message. The chance to make entertainment with a purpose feels like a new beginning. I don't think it would have happened 10 years ago.
No, well, absolutely, and we're seeing many audiences as well as broadcasters looking for shows that have got a sustainability message. I mean, do you think, as a factual entertainment producer, do you think this is the future?
I hope so, because Plimsoll's really well placed to do this. And, as I said before, it's our job to entertain first and educate second. Nobody wants to be lectured to. We want to find out information in an entertaining way that means we'll stay for the journey. So, but yes, absolutely, I think we've got to, haven't we? Our planet, as we've seen from the weather and everything in the news feeds at the moment, we've got to start turning our attention to this in a really important way. And I think, obviously, the storytellers, broadcasters, it's our job to do it.
Yeah. So turning to the celebrities and the entertainment aspect, how do you cast this? I mean, I know that you can't tell us who the celebrities are at the moment, but can you tell us how many celebrities there are going to be and how you actually cast them?
We're looking at 6 or 7 celebrities. We're really lucky because we can cast a really high calibre of celebrity, because people want to take part in something that has purpose. And obviously, aligning yourself with a conservation message is very exciting for a lot of celebrities, but also it's a chance of a lifetime. These people are going to be diving with the most incredible sharks, with the best dive team in the world, with the best natural history team in the world. So for our celebrities, the reaction's been really exciting, and we say we're casting the Olympians of the celebrity world. Everybody we're talking to is extremely well known and really high profile. So
it's a good calibre. We're talking about an above average calibre of celebrity on this type of show.
Completely. And also what we can offer them is no elimination and no humiliation. This is a reality show, it's a format, but it's got integrity at its heart, and we're not looking to have high drama from our celebrities. What we're interested in is their relationship, yes, with each other, but also with the ocean and the sharks, and their journey from fear to appreciation.
Right.
And that narrative has made people quite comfortable. As an ensemble cast, of course, we're looking for fear, but to be honest, everybody's scared of sharks. That's not been a problem. Talking to people about our safety record, which is obviously very strong, making adventure programs, has been at the heart of our conversations with celebrities. But we're looking for humour, we're looking for fun, we're looking for high profile. We want to bring as many people as we can. But we're looking for integrity and warmth. It is on the documentary side of factual entertainment more than the sort of I'm a celebrity reality side of entertainment. And so that's the sort of people we're looking for. But yes, fear, humour, great banter, all the usual things.
So when does production start then?
We are in full production already.
Right.
I think we're 4 weeks into production. We've got our second tech recce going out in 2 weeks' time. We have a full team on board. One of the sort of... It's a very difficult market at the moment, but it does mean you can hire really incredible people. We've got the absolute cream of all, the directors and camera people and everyone. We've got a really exciting team, and everyone's revving up, and we film on the 18th of November.
Right.
So
okay.
it's all happening.
And the crew then. So are you again mashing up the documentary and the natural history as well as entertainment? Is that represented within the crew as well?
Absolutely. We've got sort of above crew and a below crew. As you can imagine, diving with celebrities, with sharks out of cages is a very big technical and safety feat. So we're working with our colleagues in the adventure department and working with people like Secret Compass to make sure that we're completely across safety. And then we've got a whole wildlife team who are used to shooting sharks and shooting people underwater. And then above, we're working with factual entertainment format people. So we've got a big crew, but it's absolutely a hybrid team to bring out all the qualities that we need.
Yeah. And what keeps you up at night around this production then? What's the trickiest thing about this production, do you think?
Obviously, putting celebrities in the water with sharks is something we have to be forensic about every single detail. But weirdly, what keeps me up at night is schedule. Getting people in and out of wetsuits and putting masks on and making sure everyone's ready and making sure that we spend enough time getting the content and not too much time getting people ready. Scheduling a show like this, I mean, obviously we have an AD and it's not but scheduling, if the weather changes, if the sharks aren't there, getting everyone in and out of there, there's a lot of moving parts, there's a lot of equipment, and at no time must we be over-beguiled by the diving and the sharks. This is, it's a story about people going on a journey and making sure we create enough time in our schedule to do that. We're quite generous in our time. We're filming over 3 days per ep. Other territories that are thinking of, moving into commission have shorter time, but it is weirdly the logistics of moving people around in an unpredictable, quite wild. Bimini is thought of as, you went there on a break, but it's actually very remote.
Yeah.
It's a really remote, it's not a hostile environment, but it's a remote environment that can be subject to weather, and obviously you're dealing with wild animals. You can't produce the sharks to turn up. We know where they'll be, we're working with experts who know where they'll be, but just making sure the whole operation runs smoothly is something that concerns me.
Yeah. So this show's going out at MIPCOM, Karen, and lots of conversations are going to be happening between ITV Studios and buyers. So as a message to buyers, why should they buy this show?
It's going to be a super adrenaline-fueled reality format. It's co-viewing. It's going to be appointment to view. It's got some of the most iconic animals in the world. People are fascinated by sharks if they're 97 or if they're 7. And I think that opportunity to sit down and watch television with your family is something that's diminished. And I think this is going to be super entertaining. It's going to be beautiful. So, all those reasons. I think the appointment to view is particularly interesting. I think when you see sharks, celeb-infested waters, you're going to say, we're going to watch that.
All right, Karen Plum, Head of Factual Entertainment at Plimsoll Productions and producer of Shark Celebrity Infested Waters, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Enjoyed it.
Well, that's it for our MIPCOM Hot Pick show for today. Shark Celebrity Infested Waters from Plimsoll Productions, distributed by ITV Studios. That's it from Karen and me. Now back to the studio in Cannes. Well, thanks to Karen for chatting with me last week. I'm sure we're going to be hearing much more about shark celebrity-infested waters in the weeks and months ahead. Okay, next up, we have the honour of speaking with 2 legends of the voice acting world and have brought to life some of the most beloved characters in television history. Join us after the break.
Palais! I did.
Welcome back to Telecast Live from the Palais at MIPCOM in Cannes. So you know them as SpongeBob SquarePants and Patrick Star, but today we're talking to the talented actors behind these iconic voices as we welcome to Telecast Tom Kenny and Bill Fagerbeck. We're going to dive into everything from the early days of SpongeBob SquarePants and its incredible cultural impact, and of course we'll hear some stories from behind the scenes. Tom, Bill, thank you for joining us. How are you doing?
You're going to really get to know us.
More than you want to, probably.
Amazing to have you here, guys. How are you? You okay?
Great, man. We're thrilled to be on, and wow, MIPCOM.
Yeah.
We do stupid voices, and they brought us here. So it's pretty great.
Is it your first time? First time in Cannes? First time at MIPCOM?
Oh, yeah. Well, no.
I was in MIPCOM pre-SpongeBob, probably 30 years ago.
Wow.
For a motion capture, an early motion capture animation project whose name escapes me at the moment. Okay. But yes, one of the many dead, obscure things on my IMDb.
Well, we don't need to talk about those. That's absolutely fine.
They're there.
Don't even click on it. Nothing will come up.
25 years of SpongeBob SquarePants, which is an amazing achievement. Take us back to right at the beginning when you guys first got involved. What were your initial reactions to the characters, and did you ever think they'd become so iconic?
No one in our goofy business. I mean, if you would ever even dare hope for something like that, you're a bigger idiot than I play. You feel lucky when you stumble into something that you realize is well conceived and well executed, and you enjoy it for as long as it lasts because you got rent to pay. I didn't understand the material. I just thought I dismissed it. And I just did it, and I took my $600 and went home, forgot about it. And then 8 months later, I get this package in the mail, and it's a VHS of the pilot, and I watched it, and it changed my life. I thought, I was accidentally in one of the best cartoons I've ever seen.
Best $600 you ever had.
Yeah, for sure. Good seed money.
Many $600 later. So. Wow, yeah, it is kind of mind-blowing to realize it's been 25 years. Even though we had a 5, a 10, a 15, a 20,
right.
A 25, and they've all been celebrated, you kind of don't really notice time passing when the character that you're playing doesn't really age. The characters are the same. There's not like a character arc.
Right.
It's not like EastEnders. But maybe that would be good. I'm pitching that for the British audience.
Okay.
Deep Enders. It's kind of like, like the undersea version.
Get out of my pub.
Get out of my pub. Yeah.
So this SpongeBob's personality is, hugely infectious, obviously. I mean, how did you find the perfect voice for him? I mean, did you have this voice in your mind already, or when you first came to voice, and how did you create the voice for SpongeBob?
Well, I had worked on an earlier Nickelodeon animated show called Rocko's Modern Life, early 90s Nicktoon, that Steven Hillenburg worked on as the creative director, and I was one of the voices on it. Ironically, on that show, I was the dumb sidekick. Like, I was the Patrick guy on Rocko's Modern Life. Yeah. It was this character, Heifer, who was a steer, like a cow, like a bovine. And Steve and I just met on that show, and then when Rocko's Modern Life, did its 52 episodes, and Steve was getting ready to pitch his own show, he just remembered me and remembered a kind of an obscure voice that I had done for almost a hidden character. It was in a crowd scene, like and you just try to do different tonalities to fill out the crowd. Hey, you're 20 people gathered, at this riot or whatever. And one of the guys was this kind of squeaky voiced dude. And I totally forgot about it. I just dumped that file, and Steve remembered it and said, "Remember that?" And he played the clip for me and said, "That guy, you can barely hear him in there, but it's that guy. You can kind of isolate him." And Steve liked that voice. He said, "I think it fits this character who's kind of half a boy, half a man, to quote the Nick Lowe song. Half a child, half a grown up, part Pee Wee Herman, part Jerry Lewis, part and Steve just laid it all out very clearly. So we always knew where to go with with the show. I mean, when I first saw it, it was kind of, he hadn't even pitched it to Nickelodeon yet. It was kind of this presentation that was in his drawer at home, in his desk at home, and I just fell in love with it from the get-go.
Yeah. And you said, yeah, I can do that voice for an afternoon.
Yeah, I can do that. But not like I'm going to be doing it, not like a quarter century from now I'm going to be going,
Cut to massive scar tissue.
So Bill, Patrick is obviously lovable and innocent. I mean, have you added anything to his persona over the years? I mean, I guess if you're voice acting the same character over years, I mean, can you add anything to it, or is it just exactly the same character? To talk, talking about, as I say, well, I know it's not EastEnders, but is there something that you can bring to it over the years and develop it?
As a bit of an expert in being a moron, I do try it. I love, one of the joys for me is, first you have to recognize the intent of the writing and the moments and the beats, because they're so specifically drawn up, because they're conceived visually and the words at the same time by the storyboard artists and the writers. So you have to work within that framework. I'm always looking for a way to massage something or give a little twist and have a unique reaction that is the essence of Patrick as I know him. So yeah, I do like. It's not like we're just spitting out the lines, and we play.
Well, I
off
would
each
say,
other,
Bill, that
too.
on the Patrick Star Show, the spinoff, which is more like a sketch review, starring Patrick Star, there are different places where you go with Patrick that
For
he
sure,
wouldn't go in
right.
the SpongeBob SquarePants flagship show, because it's a bunch of comedy skits, almost Monty Python-esque by design, and so Patrick does go to a lot of different places
Right.
in those shows that you probably had not gone before that.
Oh, right, 100%. And so, but it has to be within the framework of Patrick's unique worldview. So if Patrick is doing a late night talk show host, he's also doing it the way he thinks it should be done. And so there's, so it's a fun world to play in, man. We're just big children. We're having so much fun. And this guy,
Bill's a really big child.
Yes, right.
But
You
yeah,
don't
really,
wanna
it all
dress
starts
me.
from the characters and their DNA. It all springs from that. So as long as that's your nexus where you're starting from, then everything else will follow. The writers know the characters very well. We know the characters well, and yeah, it's kind of like a nice, comfortable slipper that you can put on.
And
run
every
around
once in a
and have lot
while,
of fun.
because we have a standing after 25 years saying, but we can say, the phrasing here doesn't feel authentic to the character, and it's not like they're, hey, shut up and say the lines. We get
I guess
to,
you kind of outlasted many people that have worked on the show over that time, so you know them better than anybody else, right?
Well,
yeah, although
it's
many of the old guard are still on SpongeBob. We were
Yeah,
talking about this earlier, that a lot of people that work on SpongeBob have spent most of their adult showbiz working life in SpongeBob, like people that started on the show 25 years ago in their 20s. And here we are, 2.5 decades later.
Yeah, so there is a mutual respect there, and then the rest of them are they loved SpongeBob when they were children, and it inspired them to go into animation, and their first job is working on SpongeBob.
Yeah.
So there's this great vitality and excitement that is. You just don't find, if it was a live action show, there wouldn't be this much excitement.
Yeah.
There'd be like, all right, well, what's he doing?
It's
this week,
fun to talk to these, work with people who, they got in trouble in 4th grade for doodling SpongeBob in their textbook, and now they're working on the show SpongeBob, which was their favorite show when they were in their formative
That's
stages.
extraordinary.
So yeah, it's a beautiful thing. It's a nice mix of like curmudgeonly, crusty old timers.
Actually,
and new blood.
Vincent Waller, who's one of the people that's been around forever, as Tom referred to. He said the other day, didn't he, that a lot of times he'll get corrected by the younger writers. Yes. It's like, no, that was actually some other thing in an episode,
they know
blah,
the
blah.
SpongeBob canon,
Right,
the lore.
What Vinny has forgotten is still,
So talking about, the actual career of voice acting, and when you're playing these characters, is it a solo? I mean, are you doing this from home these days with the new technology? You can actually do it from home via various different remote recording, or do you come together in the studio and riff off each other? How does it work when in the production of the show?
Kind of all of the above, I mean, as the pandemic taught us that we could do it in a modular way.
But before that, you would always do it together, would
generally,
you? Or in the studio.
but also sometimes people would be off shooting something else, or Clancy Brown does a lot of on-camera work, so you'd have to work in Mr. Krabs later. So
he'd have to go to a studio and
mix. It's always been a mix of ensemble and.
I lasted about 8 months in my bedroom, screaming in my bedroom. I said, please let me, and I started begging Nickelodeon, please let me return to the studio. I don't care if I'm the only one, please. And the engineers were excited about that because they were having to run sessions from their apartments based on the Wi-Fi quality, so it was me and a couple of the engineers coming back into Nickelodeon when there was just one or two security people and a couple of cleaning ladies always in the kitchen area, just like talking and looking at their phones because there was nothing to clean. Yeah. And so I've been back into the studio ever since, and some of the other actors have come back into. Yeah. But I had to get out of my home. I didn't want to do it in my home. I love going to work and being in an environment that is unique to the unique job.
Yeah. I go into the studio sometimes, but I'm also a huge fan of the 20-foot commute.
Yes.
That's a nice.
Tom is the session director now,
right? Okay.
And has been for what, like 7-8 years,
wow,
something like
that long. Yeah. I'm also the voice director of all things SpongeBob. So
right. Okay.
So that's another reason why I tend to do it from home, is that there's so much happening all the time in that world. Even if I'm not voicing, I'm directing somebody who is voicing. Okay. So, but yeah, I like them both. I like being in the studio, but I know there is something about setting your alarm for 5 minutes before you have to be at work.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, actually, telecasts came from during COVID, the pandemic. I started it when I couldn't leave my house. So that's how this whole thing started.
Yeah,
so
a lot of things have grow from adversity, out of horrible times, It's like even after the nuclear blast, there's little flowers that grow through the cracks in the sidewalk. So,
that's it. No, well,
that's life.
And you're right. The experience of recording in a studio with a group of people who are really talented doing what they do is much better than sitting at home with whatever technology you've got. I think so. It's a much more social experience. There must, after 25 years, however many sessions over those 25 years, there must be an extraordinary number of bloopers or behind the scenes,
Careful.
Memorable moments that you've had. Take us inside, what your highlights of the last 25 years have been.
Well, I've worked on cartoons, I'm sure you have too, Tom, where people would, ad-lib freely, and it could be funny. But it was like a wasted take because it wouldn't be germane to what you're doing. So the challenge,
if you're ad-libbing things that could never be used in the cartoon.
Like, okay, good
it's
one,
funny,
but
after a while you're just wasting everyone's time.
Yeah. So for me, the challenge is if I'm going to play with that, and they do give us some liberty there, I want it to work. I want it to be an ad-lib that is so good that the producers are going, should we use that? And sometimes you get lucky, but also to make our fellow players giggle. There's a lot of satisfaction there.
Yeah. And so the SpongeBob has become a real cultural phenomenon. It's become this brand that's basically outgrown purely an animation. It's a cultural phenomenon. I mean, how do you feel about being involved with this whole train, the SpongeBob train.
It is a train, and it's been a runaway train for a quarter century, where just new things. It just keeps picking up speed on the downhill grade. It's kind of an amazing experience. It's and I don't think a lot of actors or creators, writers get to be on something that has that kind of juggernaut, long-time juggernaut status.
Yeah.
It's kind of overwhelming. It's a little much for my mushy, spongy brain. I try to just keep it in Bikini Bottom with the characters because if you start thinking about that, it's global. It's all these different places and all these different actors that are doing, the Japanese, the Korean, the Swedish, the Croatian, the whatever. Yeah. There's this whole universe of actors that are repeating what we've done in different languages.
Have you ever been in the same room as a lot of these people around the world?
We met the Croatian Patrick today.
Yeah, just today, right. Yeah. We've had a few, not enough.
Here at MIP.
Right.
You might meet you said the Spanish one.
Yeah, the Spanish language guy, Luis. We've been trying to make a meeting happen at some Comic-Con in Mexico City or something,
Right.
But yeah, it's a beautiful thing to be. What's one thing that's great about about it is that the characters don't have our faces. Mm-hmm. They don't look like you, so it's easy to have a very functional relationship with this character that's very popular worldwide, but doesn't share your physiognomy, so that's kind of great. I mean, I gotta say, walking around MIP, I just keep seeing all these billboards and pictures and screens with these good-looking people, CSI Toledo or whatever, and it's just like, I don't know. I think I'm having a better time than them. I gotta be honest. I would,
right.
Wow, I'm so glad I'm not on those.
Coming from the world of camera myself, getting to leave cosmetic hysteria behind is fantastic.
Yeah. And
in the voiceover world, Bill and I are considered hunks. Believe it or not, that's how low the bar is.
do you think there could be another show that's as successful and impactful as SpongeBob if it was created today? Do you think?
People sure keep trying.
Obviously we've just had MIP Junior and lots of people pitching ideas to everybody, and
given
everybody wants the next SpongeBob.
Right, exactly, and I've been hearing that since season 2.
Yeah,
and it's just, but given the shifting sands of technology and how content is distributed and consumed, who knows? I mean, it's possible.
I also think
possible.
That anything can be the next big thing.
For sure.
Anything can be the next big thing. Often, unexpectedly, SpongeBob just kind of happened. It wasn't engineered. It wasn't, it wasn't created in a laboratory. It kind of just happened. It was just something that one guy, Steven Hillenburg, drew on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
And then the rest all sprang from that, and people responded to it, and it actually was going to be canceled after season 4. And then came back once people, once the bean counter started seeing how well it was doing and how much licensing and product it was doing.
Yeah.
But by the way, we're very happy that decision was made.
And I have to say too,
fathers of children,
it helps when you have the greatest voiceover actor ever in animation, Tom Kenny. That helps. He is the Mel Blanc of our time. And that helps.
That right?
I did.
Okay, I want to make sure I'm not dreaming that. Thank you, Bill. Well, we love it. We love what we do, and it's like I said, it seems like this charmed situation, like a lottery ticket that fell on the sidewalk in front of us. We were just, ooh, what's this thing? And 25 years later, you're still having fun, having a good time, still feeling creative. Still
enjoy it.
Yeah, still and
I get
still
excited
going, wow,
when I get done.
Yeah,
when I'm going into work.
To do new things with SpongeBob. Oh, a Broadway musical. Oh, the Super Bowl. Oh, a new series. Oh, another movie.
Yeah.
It never feels de rigueur. I just use bad French because I'm in Cannes. Okay, but yeah, it's a really. It's hard to. express just how lucky we feel,
Yeah.
and it's all good. Like I always say, I've tried to find a downside
Yeah.
to SpongeBob, just as a mental exercise,
Yeah.
and I can't find any downside. It's like, wow, it's all good.
Well, I guess
Maybe I'm
where
just shallow.
Where I was coming from with that question is obviously we've got the world of YouTube, we've got the world of social media, we've got the world of handheld devices now, which really didn't exist back then.
Not at all.
So I guess that the way that characters are discovered by kids is completely different now. So
You're right about that.
I'm wondering, if you think that will have an effect on the new kind of shows that have been.
It has to. It's beyond my ken to really actually consider what it would look like.
You mean
but,
it'll have an effect on shows yet to be created, or on our show?
Yeah. I mean,
yet to be created.
on your show, obviously, it was on always on Nickelodeon, and that was a destination that people went for when to watch SpongeBob. But now there are so many different messages and so many different channels for kids and young people to consume content. So many social media channels. It's all about this attention economy now. We're
Right.
Yeah.
and I just wonder, whether these sort of characters could, ever have as lasting impact as they had when it comes from back in the day when there was, more linear channels that people used to
Right.
go to MTV for music or Nickelodeon for, for
Obviously, we
SpongeBob.
live in a much more splintered, fragmented world now. But one thing that I always try to keep top of mind is that SpongeBob. Yes, SpongeBob's been around for 25 years. Yes, SpongeBob is very popular. Yes, SpongeBob is globally known to a certain number of people. But there's always somebody discovering SpongeBob for the first time right now.
Yeah.
There's always somebody. Today will be the day that some kid falls in love with SpongeBob, and they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, what's this?" Now, they're probably not discovering it the way that somebody did in 1999. I don't know how they're discovering it, but if they like no matter how they find out about it, the characters will appeal to them in the same way, or so one hopes. And really, it really is all about the characters, and the delivery system is something that nobody really has any control over, right?
Yeah.
Like storytellers and creators just have to keep creating characters and telling stories, and how that goes into the brains of young impressionable viewers who will soon become older influential people in the adult world, in the entertainment world, is anybody's guess. It's so I think to try to prognosticate that is a fool's game.
Hurts my brain.
So one final question, or maybe two, but I can't interview such iconic voices without asking you about AI and the development of AI in the States, which is obviously development everywhere. I mean, it's speeding up everywhere. It's coming into voicing. It's coming into all sorts of different elements of entertainment. What do you feel about it? I mean, of course, it's threatening to voice actors, massively.
And to writers, and to on-camera actors.
There are
kind of to
so
everybody
many.
who has a body and physically does things.
Yeah.
There are so many ifs involved, and many of those ifs are dispiriting at best. The pleasures, the challenges and pleasures of being able to work in the field of entertainment it's such a rich way, and it spans not just performers, but everyone that works in the world and does everything that we can't do because we're just like goofballs. How much of I don't know. I mean, how much of that do we
Again,
just
nobody
give
knows.
over to?
Well, I mean, what I'm finding very, very is becoming more and more frequently used when, for example, an actor, is either ill or sick, or they can't.
How you feeling these days?
For
Are you-
whatever,
I feel good.
for whatever reason, they may not be able to make a recording, and there's maybe one line that they didn't use,
Right.
and it's like, okay, we can just clone your voice easily,
Beep,
and
beep,
pop
beep.
that in,
Yep.
And
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting that would happen during SpongeBob, but I mean, it's happening. You know,
it's
in
happening,
productions all
and,
over the world.
you know, it's hard to put the genie back in the bottle or the toothpaste back in the tube.
Yeah.
And it's hard to put the genie back into the toothpaste tube. That's just difficult. But I think I'm kind of two minds about it, right? Like one side of me has hope that, what human beings and like that organic factor, that special something spur of the moment thing that voice actors and actors bring to performance can't be replaced by an algorithm.
Yeah.
Then I look at history and I say, for the most part, just being very logical, anytime a person's job becomes, anytime a job is able to be done with technology instead of a human being, it's not great for the humans.
Yeah.
You know,
If it's quicker and cheaper, the world of business tends to find the quicker and cheaper way. Right?
Yeah, there's a lot of milkmen and
indeed.
bowling alley pin setters who probably thought they'd have a job forever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
who knows?
Well, let's talk about what's next then.
Now I'm just
finally. Oh well, no, let's not. Well, there's no way that AI is replacing you two anytime soon. I can
Oh,
tell you.
stop!
So very last question then. What's next for SpongeBob? What are we seeing new that's coming down the track?
Well, there's got a feature next year, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff coming down the track. More episodes of the show, more streaming movies for cable and television streaming, and a theatrical feature for Christmas 2025.
Right.
So
They tend to
I had
tell
do
us
the
at the
math on
last
that one.
second. Yeah,
but yeah,
you're
there's
right.
a lot. There's always things happening in SpongeBob world. There's always stuff percolating, and there's never any lack of stuff for us to do.
That's for sure.
You know,
Right.
that's nice
Great.
because I'm hyperactive and I get bored easily.
Well, listen, I'm gonna set you loose on the corridors of MIPCOM.
Oh boy!
And listen, thank you so much, guys, for coming in. It's been an
Thank you.
absolute delight to speak to you.
Well,
And,
thank
Nice to
you.
see you.
all
Thank
the
you.
best, and thank you very much. We're going to take a short break now from some of our sponsors, some messages.
Sponsors?
On an all new Wednesday on this.
Palais!
Something about small towns. You have to be who you are. I'm Carl Elberg, Chief of Police.
How are your murders?
Unsolved. Everyone confesses sooner or later to somebody. I just thought there might be something you'd like to tell me.
Well, you thought wrong, Sonny.
I can always tell when somebody's lying to me.
Welcome back. Now, MIPCOM is the place where all the big entertainment groups want to make the news and announce new deals and shows. And I'm delighted to be joined by Andy Fry from MIPCOM News to give us the latest scoop on all the latest developments coming out of this year's event in News from the Floor. Welcome to the show, Andy. How are you doing?
Hi, Justin. Very good, thank you. How are you?
I'm great. And this is our first live stream, so it's very exciting. And we've had a great lineup of guests so far. We've had SpongeBob SquarePants and...
Excellent. Well, I hope I can follow that.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah, you've got big boots to fill.
Exactly.
As I said in the intro, lots of news is announced at MIPCOM and lots of journalists scouring the Palais for the latest stories. Can you give us a sense of what news stories that have come out of the market so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still relatively early days. We're halfway through day one, so it's like half time, in a football match, just waiting to know the final score. A lot of people have just started their meetings today, so there aren't a huge amount of announcements. But I would say I'm off to a session about scripted formats in about 20 minutes, and there've been a couple of scripted format deals. So I think that's an interesting area because one of the big themes about the market is people playing it safe, people being risk averse, and I think scripted formats plays into that. So there's a Japanese format called Mother, which has been very successful over the last 3 or 4 years, and it's just done another deal, I think, in Greece. And perhaps a bigger story is All 3 Media's Liar, which was originally a UK show, and that's now got 15 deals. It's just done a deal with Botswana, which again shows the durability of that format, but also the fact that it can play out in Botswana shows that it's also quite scalable as a format. So I think scripted formats is an interesting area.
Yeah, and so when you say about less risk-averse strategies,
more risk-averse.
Sorry,
yeah,
more risk-averse. Essentially, that is benefiting probably the bigger distribution groups who have got proven formats that have sold internationally already.
Yeah, I mean, it manifests itself in a number of ways. I mean, obviously, big groups tend to do well in tough times. I mean, for example, people buy their catalogue. So there's been a big shift towards catalogue sales as opposed to commissions over the last year. And I think it kind of manifests itself in the way that franchises are being extended. So again, I mean, I was thinking about, if you look at the front of the magazine, there's Suits LA. So Suits is a franchise that ran very successfully, and now NBCU have brought Suits LA. So it's an example of a reboot of a show that they know can work well, and they're bringing it back with a bit of a dust-up. You've got Warner Brothers Discovery who are here, and they've got The Penguin, which is obviously an extension of the whole Batman franchise. And you've got The Physician, Beta Film from Germany, made a great product called The Physician about 10 years ago, and now they're making The Physician too. So I think that's another way of being risk-averse. It doesn't mean that the quality is poor. The quality of these productions is very high, but if you can go back into a pre-existing franchise, it's a way of just taking some of the fear out of the market for buyers.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So we might be starting to see the return of lots of seasons or series, should I say, that were perhaps assumed that that they've been dead and buried, but they're back from the dead in many cases.
Everyone is minding their catalogues. I mean, I think scripted formats, it's quite a difficult thing to do, so there perhaps aren't as many in the market as you might expect. I mean, when one happens, there tends to be a lot of noise around it, and it gives the impression it's a very big, scalable market. Yeah. But I definitely think scripted formats is in vogue at the moment. People are having conversations, and I definitely think the reboot of franchises. And I suppose the other area, which is similar, is the notion of, I mean, everyone keeps talking about this as the age of collaboration. So more co-production, more co-financing, and relationships you would never have imagined 5 or 10 years ago, they're in vogue now. And I think there was one I read about this morning, which was announced in market, was Beta Film coming up with a production deal with Globo in Brazil. So 2 very big, powerful, influential players. But I wouldn't historically have thought of Beta and Globo as being obvious partners, but clearly they've found a way to make that work. So I think that kind of collaboration is the other thing that plays into this, playing it safe, risk aversion, but while still wanting to deliver the best quality you can.
Yeah. Well, we're going to be talking about co-production with our first panel in about 15 minutes, so that'll be a good opportunity to delve into that in a little bit more detail. So I saw ITV Studios had made a number of announcements today, haven't they? On the Monday morning of the market. One of which was a new digital label that they've announced.
Yeah, so Zoo 55, that's an interesting development. I think there's been a sense for a while that digital first content in the world of YouTube and so on is separate and distinct from traditional format. But actually, the two groups are moving much closer together. So we've seen Banijay get into this area already, and now ITV Studios talking about taking its existing content and getting it out into those platforms. And actually, just before I came on air, I was talking to Millimage, who are a French animation studio, well-established studio, and I was asking them, YouTube is so important in the kids market now, and I was asking them what they were doing. So one of their big properties, Malang, is being given a digital spin-off, and they're also beginning to look at the possibility for the first time of testing new IP in the social platform space, and then maybe if it works, if it gets the right kind of momentum and resonance, taking that out to broadcasters to see if that can work. So I think those old those old kind of suspicions about relationships between the two markets are definitely breaking down quite rapidly now.
Yeah, that's really interesting to see. And actually, Zoo 55 and the team from ITV Studios are going to be part of the digital content forum on telecast that we're running on the 7th of November at the BFI South Bank. So, if you want to hear more about that, then please come along. So, what about some of the keynotes, Andy? The starting to. I think it's this afternoon, the first major ones.
Yeah, there'll be a few of them happening this afternoon. I think there's All 3 Media's Jane Turton. That'll be interesting because they've been taken over by a company called Redbird, which will be interesting to see whether that comes with investment, new opportunities, new production possibilities. We've got Channing Dungay from Warner Brothers Discovery, who's a really interesting exec. She'll be talking about their slate, which is a kind of combination of big scripted pieces like The Penguin, which I mentioned, and also formats. So one of their big formats at the moment is The Golden Bachelor, which they've spun off into another show called The Golden Bachelorette, and it's another example of the format side, although on the non-scripted side. So they've sold The Golden Bachelor, I think, into about 10, 15 countries now as a format. So that's done well for them. And then later in the day, Sony are here, and Sony are very interested. It's Tony Vinciquerra. And they're a very interesting company because, to a large extent, they stayed out of the streaming wars.
Yeah.
So while the big players were all getting caught up in this walled garden, how to protect the content, how to fleece us for as much money as they could.
How to be a consumer brand, basically, wasn't it? They've all struggled with. But Sony stayed out of that.
Sony stayed out of that. I mean, they have Crunchyroll, which is a streamer, so they're not averse to having the right streamer and the right business model. But for the most part, they said, actually, we're a program supplier, and it's better for us to be able to go out and sell to 5, 10 different companies rather than blocking ourselves in. And I think that kind of connects in a way to Evan Shapiro was talking this morning at the AI Summit. And he's very, Evan is a really interesting character with some very upfront views. And he was basically saying that this walled garden approach is pretty much a failure for the big players, that what they need to be doing is finding a way to combat big tech. All the ad revenue has gone into 3 companies. Basically, it's Meta and Amazon and Google. And the walled garden approach has disintermediated the data that the TV companies have and made it more difficult for them to compete. So he's arguing for a kind of a radical collaboration, a way that they bring their data together and actually find a unified way of combating the real threat, which is big tech, as opposed to each other.
Yeah, and it's interesting with Sony, isn't it? Because as you said, they stayed out of that, but they seem to do very well. As a result of staying out of that and without spending billions on a new platform.
I think so. I think again, we spoke to Tony Vinciquerra before the market, and he said exactly that. In his time in charge, they've grown the business every year for about the last 5 years. And obviously it's been a difficult time. But I do think, if you stay out of the streaming business, as they've done to a large extent, you can sell to a lot of customers. And you also don't get caught up in this thing about whether you have to put your own content on your own platform. You can just get out and sell, you can keep your third-party distribution piece going as well. And that's, companies like All 3 Media are in a similar kind of position. Fremantle, there are lots of quite big players here who are actually kind of saying, told you so. We're producing, we're co-financing, we're distributing without having got caught up in the streamer wars, which, have been hideously expensive for the big players.
Yeah, absolutely. So how about later on in the week, Andy? What are you looking forward to? What are the announcements that we can expect later on in the week? And, how does it usually work when it comes to news being announced during the market? Because in many cases, you see an enormous amount of press releases happening at the same time, and obviously journalists have got to trawl through them, find out which ones are actually interesting to the marketplace.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reality is that a lot of people come to market with pre-prepared information. They want to hit very big on the Sunday and Monday, so they issue news about deals. So they come and they say we've sold this to 20 countries or 30 countries. So there's been some of that. Then they get into the live meetings. So they've kind of come with their pre-prepared announcements. They then come into their live meetings, and that's not necessarily going to facilitate news straight away, because it could be the beginning of a meeting that then requires follow-up at a later stage. And everybody in the business is talking about how decision making is really slow at the moment. It takes time for people to actually get things to completion. So possibly they'll agree something, and then there'll be due diligence, and it might be that the actual deal doesn't happen until 2 or 3 weeks later, or even at the next market. I mean, there's one interesting non-scripted example which I was thinking about is another Japanese show called Old Enough. And Old Enough is actually a format that Nippon TV first brought to MIPCOM about a year ago, presented, and then it got on Netflix in its original form, and then it got picked up by TVO in Canada. So sometimes it's you just have to kind of take a breath, get your content out there, start telling people about it, and sometimes you get a break, like Netflix showing the program, and then that leads to a deal, and then today they announced a renewal, a second season for TVO. So it can be an ongoing process. So yeah, I think you have to be careful not to get too caught up in the immediate deal making, although of course there'll be announcements, but yeah.
So, Andy, well, thank you so much for spending time with us. I mean, I know that you're rushing to and from meetings and sessions and writing.
Looking
You've got
at my daily steps.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Well, thanks a lot for joining us. We'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow as well for more news from the floor.
No problem.
Okay, we're going to take a short break before we kick off our first telecast panel session of MIPCOM 2024. We'll be discussing the increasingly important world of co-production in TV drama with Kate Barnes, SVP of Global Content, Scripted at ITV Studios, Richard Tulkhart from Buccaneer, and Pablo Conde, Director General of Internationalization at ISEX. We'll see you shortly.
Something about small towns. You get to be who you are. I'm Carl Alberg, Chief of Police.
How are your murders?
Unsolved. Everyone confesses sooner or later to somebody. I just thought there might be something you'd like to tell me.
Well, you thought wrong, Sonny.
I can always tell when somebody's lying to me.
Palais!
Welcome back to Telecast, live from the Palais here in Cannes. Next up, we have our first panel session. And we have a great panel with Kate Barnes, SVP of Global Content Scripted here at ITV Studios, Richard Tulkhart from Buccaneer Media, and Pablo Conde, Director General of Internationalization at ISEX Spain and Investment. Thank you very much, all you guys, for joining us. It's great to have you with us. So first of all, co-production obviously has become increasingly popular model in TV drama recently. What do you think is driving this trend? First of all, Kate, how do you see it evolving over the next few years when it comes to co-production?
I mean, there's always been co-production, particularly sort of countries coming together to fund sort of higher end drama. I think what's obviously happening, a couple of things. Production budgets are going up, and fundamentally they're harder to finance. So that's where a co-production model definitely comes in. And then also, you've got sort of successful streamers in markets who are wanting, local for local is incredibly important. So, what works very well in the UK is UK content. So having a sort of partnership alongside the broadcaster in the home territory also makes that co-production relationship within territory really important. So it's a funding opportunity. It's a building something bigger than maybe you can afford on your own, because a storyline naturally works across multiple territories.
Yeah. How about you, Pablo? How do you see this co-production trend developing? Is that something that you've seen from a Spanish perspective?
I think it's, as Kate was saying, it's something that is happening a lot, both for the storytelling part of view, because you have it with co-production, two sides of the same story, and also from the funding point of view, and also having those international successes, local, that have gone global, reduces fear in everyone, because they see that a local product can go global. And I think that's something that is helping a lot. You have several cases in Spain, like Elite or Money Heist, that are driven those opportunities. So I think that's a trend that will be more stable, and then because of higher prices, because of that necessity for storytelling that is global, but also because of the financial point of view. And I think in that case, tax incentives also play a high role, both for US dramas that are being shot here in Europe, or also because you have the tax incentive for the European film features.
Yeah, and we're going to come back to talk a little bit about incentives in Spain and what you're doing to attract more co-productions. Richard, from a producer perspective, how do you see the growing importance of co-productions? Is it something? I mean, I know it's something that you're very much involved with at Buccaneer, but how have you seen that develop maybe over the last 5 years or so?
I mean, it's largely driven by necessity. Producers, on the whole, are relatively selfish people, so if they didn't have to work with other partners, they probably would choose not to. Yeah. But at the same time, I don't sit in that camp. It is largely driven by necessity. I mean, the budgets have, over the last 5 years, to say that they've increased exponentially is not an exaggeration. I mean, the costs at every factor have been driven way higher.
And that's due to interest rates and lots of external factors as well.
There's a lot of external factors. Yeah. There is general inflation in the world, coupled with an inflation in the industry that is beyond inflation in the world. And a lot of that has been driven by the demand that there's been. And I would say now, for the first time, when we were making The Crow Girl with ITV, it was the first time we started to see that inflation was not as rampant as it has been. And it felt a little bit more possible to control a show. That said, in the landscape of co-productions, like both of you have been pointing out, there is the tax incentives, which you can access best via co-production. There's the Creative Europe end of things, which requires a UK producer to be partnered with somebody to be able to access it. And so it just comes back to the necessity, and you can't make a really high-end drama for less than a certain amount, and that certain amount has got too high to do it on just a broadcaster and a distributor in general.
Yeah. Okay. So Pablo, coming back to you, I mean, in terms of Spanish local productions, we've seen a lot of investment from Amazon, for example, and Netflix, and some very popular series come out of the country. What advantages does Spain offer then from for potential international partners, and how does ISEX support the industry in your country?
So the advantages are a lot of them. You can summarize it, I would say, in 4 points. I would say the tax incentives are some of them, because you have both cashback when we're talking about foreign producers shooting in Spain, or we have a tax rebate also for those co-productions. And those tax incentive goes with a lower 30% with the minimum, and in certain regions will go up to 50% or 60%. So it's very interesting, and I think it's very competitive compared to other countries. And it's a system that has been going on for more than 10 years, improving itself every time. And I think that's what provides for those streamers and to go to Spain and shoot in Spain. For example, in 2022, you have more shows shooted in Spain than in the UK. You had 34 shows when you had only 32 in the UK. So it's a turn back on that position. I think that's very important. And whereas every big streamer was closing their production centers in Europe, in Spain they were growing. You have the production center of Netflix. Amazon Prime is producing a lot over there, because Spanish content is working pretty much everywhere. And ITEX is helping both by promoting the Spanish content abroad, by promoting co-production, because for us it's very important co-production, because we are aware that those streamers have less money, and that necessity of co-production is bigger and bigger every time. And because we have also those tax incentives that are really great for the companies. And we have the talent, which is very important and no one talks about, because incentives, everyone has tax incentives, but if you don't have the talent, you don't have the combination.
You mean local production talent?
Local production talent, yeah.
Yeah. And just briefly, when it comes to these tax incentives, how do you actually unlock them? Because, it sounds, is it straightforward, or is it a really long bureaucratic process, which I think some people might fear that...
It's public. So you have a bureaucratic part of it, but I would say that it's true that it takes some time, and some people complain that it does take sometimes. If you do it by the beginning of the year, it takes to the next year's fiscal year to have those incentives. But you have a lot of operators, both national and international, that are willing to monetize beforehand those incentives. So I think that part is really okay. It's like any other system at the end, that you have the tax incentives. You get the money as fast as you want. If you want to monetize it, you have it better, faster, and if you don't want to monetize it, you'll have it by next year.
Yeah, and I know ISEX is you've got a drive as well for making it easier for international producers to come to Spain, haven't you?
We have a one-stop shop, that is the Spain Audiovisual Bureau, that we help for free, both in Spanish and English, those producers that want to come to Spain to shoot, or that are looking for a co-producer. And we'll give the answer in 48 hours if it's quite easy, or by 7 days if it takes a little bit longer.
Right.
And if you're looking for co-production or tax incentive, we do also have a list of curated tax lawyers that are really important, because at the end we're a public entity, and it depends on the complexity of the program and the project that would give you the advice you need for that co-production or shooting in Spain.
Richard, coming back to you, international co-productions like So Long, Marianne, which is a new show that's just come out in various territories. When you're working with multiple partners from a broadcaster perspective, how on earth do you align them all? Because to me, it sounds like a logistical nightmare, because everybody involved as a co-production partner from a network perspective has a different viewpoint and obviously wants to have a certain input. How do you manage that from a production perspective?
It's very good training for my second career in politics. I would say it's not possible to align everybody. It's just not, and you have to accept that when you go into a co-production. But going into a co-production with multiple producers or multiple commissioners, they're slightly different things, but both of them require the same sort of ability to understand people's different cultures is a really important one how we do things in the UK is not necessarily how Spain does things. And so when you're going into those partnerships, you do need to know these people. You can't just go because they're a company and they offer the ability to go there. You've got to get to know people before you go into a co-production, because if you don't, I promise you, you will find trouble. And you've got to be able to have an argument and sit down on the same day and have a beer. You've got to be able to understand that one person putting in more money doesn't mean that they have the only voice in the room. If there's money from all different parts, which for so long Marianne, which launched on ITVX last week, we've had Norwegian, Canadian, German, Belgian, UK money all at the same time, all with a different perspective on a story that people think they knew, and you have to listen to them to a degree. But as the lead producer, you've also got to have a strong voice that says, this is the show we're making, and you bought into that. And it's just a balance. It's just, at the end of the day, it's about having a level of respect for each other. And if you can manage that, you should be able to make a decent show.
Yeah, and be a politician in a
and be a politician, yeah.
So, Kate, ITV Studios obviously are leading in global drama production. How do you approach finding the right co-production partners? I mean, what are you looking for when you're considering a collaboration?
Well, I think it's exactly what Rich said. I mean, it's ultimately it's a people business, and so you've got to get on with the people. You know, there are two types. There's a co-production where, you know, producers are co-producing, and then there's also kind of financing co-producers as well.
Yeah.
And when we're, you know, it's not only that you like the people, but you want to make the same show. So, you know, you pitch the show to, you know, we've got the show, it's been commissioned by XYZ, do you want to be the co-producer on it? They've got to understand the show, they've got to spend time with the commissioner, with the writer, you've got to know that we're making the same show, that everyone wants the same aim at the end of the day, and like you say, listen to their perspective as well, but ultimately get all those questions and all that out on the table before you start. You know, what is the expectation? Who's going to transmit first? Who's going to be allowed to put their press release out? Can you put it out at the same time? Are you going to be on the press release? You know, what's the branding going to be? Who gets the credits? Like, there's a lot of stuff. Just get it out right at the beginning and know that you want to make the same show, and know that the producer and the two broadcasters are going to get on, because it's a long road.
Yeah, I mean, it's remarkable. I've seen that how often that doesn't happen. You know, when those conversations are really had at the beginning of a project, and you do, you know, see those problems coming down the line, and you know, there's so many kinks in the road that don't need to be there.
Yeah, because you can't ever account for absolutely everything, but through experience of doing them, we've come across some kinks, and we've learnt the next time you go, right, we're going to discuss right at the beginning who gets what credit at what point. And,
I think experience
you know,
is the key bit there, because you've got to work out what's a problem and what's not a problem.
Yeah.
And I think with inexperience, problems become big problems very quickly when actually they're not.
Yeah, you've got to choose your hill to die on, and
You do.
and the ones that you've got to just wave through.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So streamers have become involved in co-productions increasingly in the last few years. What new opportunities and challenges has that led to for ITV Studios?
Well, I mean, we've done a number of streamers, and I think there's the concept of a global streamer, and there's the concept of a local streamer. So obviously we've had co-productions with globals, sort of like, you know, The Serpent was, you know, it was a while ago, but that was, you know, Netflix and BBC. But then we've also, you know, we have had After the Flood, which has been an ITV and a BritBox. So that's, you know, and they're different entities, because one's, you know, multiple territories, one's a single territory, and you're answering, you know, some wants to go day and date. That is more of a challenge, day and date with multiple languages, or got to be ready at the same time. And then some, you know, it's maybe not day and date, so that gives you different challenges. So I think, you know, streamers are hugely important to all of us in every aspect of our business, and they have been part of co-productions in different ways, and continue to be. Mentioned about local for local, you know, wanting to be second window or sometimes first window with the host broadcaster. So it happens a lot in Spain. You know, we have one in France at the moment that's happening between Arte and HBO. So, you know, they are taking different roles in different projects, and that is evolving.
Yeah. Do you feel that the rise in co-productions is affecting the types of stories that are being told around the world?
No, I don't think that. I think there've always been stories. You have hyper-local stories that travel. So I mentioned After the Flood. It's a very British specific, but it works incredibly well in America. And it's going to be on France very soon and lots of other territories. And they can be very local, and they still work very well internationally. I think, and then we've told bigger stories like say Bodyguard or Vigil, or these bigger sort of stories that have got more of a global DNA to them that were always going to be made. It's just they fit more naturally as well with sort of international. So I don't think that's changed the stories. I think what might change is, as budgets go up, is that if you need a co-producer to finance your show, which is not every show. I mean, we still, do the license fee, tax and distributor model a lot. If you absolutely cannot make the show without some big injection, then there are some stories, obviously, which are less naturally leaning towards a co-production.
Yeah.
And that's the only sort of difference. I don't think we'll change the types of stories. The trick will be is the budgets that you maybe can make some very, very specific project. But that's always been the same everywhere, to be honest with you. I think whenever you need distributor money to finance a show, a very, very hyper-local that is too specifically local, you'll always need to look at how you're financing it.
Yeah.
What's your budget?
Yeah. Pablo, coming back to you, I mean, Spain, country of honor, MIPCOM 2024. So we're seeing lots of news about Spain and Spanish productions and the industry as a whole here. Tell us a little bit about what i6 is doing then to help drive these more co-productions and more investment, and also export when it comes to Spain and the audiovisual industry.
So we're having co-production get-togethers. For example, we have here in MIPCOM with the Korean delegation, with the Argentinian delegation. We participate also in other markets such as Series Mania or co-production markets, or here or in the film industry, also in Maxedo Film. We are working there, and we have been working for the last 3 years because we have the Spain Audiovisual Hub of Europe plan for the last 3 years. And for us, it's very important to help that co-production in giving information to all the partners that you have a big Spanish industry that has come a level up, I would say, during the last 3 years, that we have bigger and bigger players being able to talk to the streamers face-to-face without being ashamed, I would say, because they were too small. And now we have here, you can see them in MIPCOM, that they are becoming bigger players in the content producing, but also in the service producing. We have been working with them with fam trips. We have a curated event both in the UK in November and in the US in December, in order to show the benefits of shooting and co-producing with the Spanish companies. Or in content in London, we also do a breakfast with Spanish and UK producers, because we believe there is a lot of future in co-production, and because of bigger budgets or because of locally, worldwide stories that need to be told in a co-production model way also.
Yeah. So the news is that Spain is really doubling down when it comes to inviting import and export when it comes to.
Yes, because for us it's very important. We were having with Parrot Analytics some numbers about the sector, and in revenues for the streamer platforms, the Spanish produced content has become $5.1 billion in the last 4 years. If you look at the numbers of how many shows produced in Spain are being watched, it increased by 40% in the US and Canada. In the last year, 73% in Europe, which is big numbers because they were already being watched a lot. And we are not talking about Money Heist or Berlin, which are the ones that everyone knows about. We're talking about the Red Dame, for example, or other shows that have become really, really strong. We have around 200 shows that went to top 10% of the streaming platforms in the last 3 years, which is a lot. We are not talking about one show. 200 shows is a lot because the Spanish content works really well pretty much everywhere because we have the talent, and that talent is what is needed in order to go global.
And many people forget that the Hispanic market in the United States is almost, the population is almost bigger than the UK, for example, so it's a really serious market.
Yeah, it's true, and the Latin American market is also a big one. And I think with Money Heist and the streaming platforms was the first time that our titles didn't have to be doubled to Latino. And everyone is willing to listen to Spanish content and not Latino content. And I think that's a big opportunity for the production of shows in Spain.
Yeah. Richard, we've seen a huge downturn in the US with the scripted industry in particular. Have you seen that affect the market in Europe, and in which case, how?
Yes, I mean, the US not being online, the US not being healthy is not healthy for the industry, full stop. So, I think a lot of people felt when there was the writers' strike and these sorts of things going on, that this was going to benefit European producers, particularly UK producers, and that wasn't the case. The US needs to be healthy for the industry to be healthy, and at the moment, we all know what's going on. There's a lot less being spent and a lot less being commissioned, and whether it's pre-buys or distributors coming on early with the hope of a US number, I think that there's a moment in time here where the realistic approach is there may not be a number against a US sale, which is tough, and so you've got to adapt to that. And again, I think to the world's changed, and co-production is there to help this. Is you've got to be able to make a show for a number at the moment, and that I would say that number is less than £2 million an episode for a big drama, and if you want to go bigger than that, you're looking at either going to an SVOD worldwide, or you've got the US coming in and back online, which at the moment it doesn't feel like it's fully back online.
No,
but it will come back.
You think so? I mean, you're
yeah, I do. I mean, it's everyone talks about cyclical industries, and this is one of those. I think it's fair to say that I've never seen it as bad as it is or has been for the last year in my few years of doing this. But it's an enormous industry. It's too big to fail.
Yeah.
And it will come back. And I think we've had a period of years of making hay, and there was probably too much being made, and there were probably too many production companies, and that was various reasons why that happened when it did happen. And
but this feels a bit more like more than a belt tightening. Right
yeah,
now,
I think this is a change in the industry. I think this is a fundamental shift to something that is going to look different when it settles. And by different, I think it will be smaller. I think that you're going to find it harder to get commissions, but there may be a bit more rigor as well that comes in, which I think, again, was needed, because the industry survives on shows of quality, not on volume of shows. Yeah. And that bit needs to come back a bit more, I think. But the UK market is, it's still pretty healthy. I mean, there's commissions are happening. I mean, we've got commissions. There's Channel 4 is spending money, ITV is spending money, the BBC is, Sky is, and then you've got your local SVODs. So, that is a bit of a shift. If you're a producer that has gone down the road of, I'm only going to make shows over £4 million for the SVOD services, and that's what you've been doing for the last few years, then you're in a bit of trouble. If you've diversified, or if you've kept looking after what is now sort of called traditional broadcasters, but broadcasters, and you know how to make shows in that sort of range, and it just depends on what people chose to do.
Yeah, yeah. And you say that the companies are commissioning. Have you seen an improvement in that then in the last 6 months or so?
In the UK?
Yeah.
It's in a way, I don't think the UK has really felt the effects that other territories have. It's remained pretty healthy on the commissioning front. I would say it's slower. I think that's fair to say. Decisions are taking a bit longer. Obviously, the advertising market is, that's troubling, I think, for the future. But equally, there are many different ways to get things financed these days. And if you've been around the international space rather than just a producer in the UK, and Buccaneer, we're the sort of the model of the company is stories for everybody in all parts of the world, and that comes about through having done international for 25 years or whatever it is. There are many routes to getting these things financed, and it's for me interesting working with other cultures and getting that feed into a script can really benefit it done in the right way.
Yeah. Kate, what's your outlook then for the industry? When it comes to scripted and co-productions and the industry as a whole over the next 12 months or so.
Yeah, well, I would echo what we said. We've got a really healthy slate. We've got some fabulous projects that we've both brought to market this time, and that have been commissioned in the last month. I'm constantly being pitched by producers, by shows that are in development at the main broadcasters, both in the UK and abroad. There is budgets are going up. That budgets have gone up and are carrying up. That is the biggest challenge, because there is just less money. The ad market has been affected with everybody. The streamers obviously are retrenching down to look at profit rather than sort of like quantity. So yes, there are stretches in the market, but in terms of brilliant talent still exists, brilliant storytelling still exists, commissioners still commissioning still exists. The funding model is the bit where we have to all pull together and really sort of put our heads together about how we're going to make these shows a reality. And that's really both a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. It's about good relationships kicking in. It's about knowing that you're much broader than your own domestic borders. You need to look side, and that might come from a co-production, that might come from a pre-sale, that might come from a distributor model, that might come from incentives. It's about looking at all of them, looking at your own production model, looking at, do I need 20 locations or can I survive on 15 locations? It's down to all of us to make sure that we continue the health of a really, really strong and vibrant scripted market. And from my conversations, from what I'm experienced, that's what's happening. So I'm very positive about it, but it does, it's a collaboration.
Yes.
It is. Relating, you've got to understand your partner's problems, and obviously, we speak the whole time. What distributors are finding difficult at the moment is different to what producers are finding difficult at the moment. And as long as everyone's aware of each of those areas, I think you can work with the right partners. You can find your way through, and everyone needs to give a little bit and help each other out at the moment, rather than trying to kill each other.
Collaboration, that's it.
Here we go.
Exactly.
Well, everybody's sitting around a table, and obviously lots of people doing that all the time at MIPCOM, and many of you are doing that 10, 15 times a day with different partners. It's extremely busy. I know you've all got to dash. One final question, though. Pablo, what advice would you give producers then looking to work specifically with Spain on co-productions? What would be your single piece of advice to them?
I would say, if you are here in MIPCOM, come to our stand. If not, talk to us with the Bureau, the Spanish Audiovisual Bureau, because you will have all the help you want. And think a little bit out of the box in that funding problem you do have. We have a lot of experience with the tax incentives. We have great opportunities with our crews that are really international. We don't have a visa, for example, for less than 90 days, which is really important, and we do have a visa for more than 90 days. But if you have been shortening your periods of shooting, you will have more than enough with 90 days. And it's quite easy. We have the locations, a very well-connected country. You can go pretty much. Saying that to the UK is easy, because you come to Spain for holidays and you know how well-connected we are, both to the UK, but within Spain with our high-speed rail, we have very good connections everywhere. You can be pretty much all over Spain in less than 3 hours by a high-speed train, which is a lot of opportunities. We have been doing this for more than 70 years. That we started with the spaghetti westerns, and we do speak English, so it's not so difficult.
Much better than many of us, I think. Richard, any final pieces of advice for any producers entering into the co-production market? And you talked there about collaboration is obviously key.
Yeah, I think you just got to go into it with an open mind. I mean, problems arise. It will forever be a difficult thing to make a show. I would just go back to what I said earlier, which is make sure you know who you're getting into bed with.
Yeah.
And it will make life a lot easier.
Yeah. Okay, finally, any more pieces of advice from you for co-productions?
No, I think it's relationships at the end of the day. Exactly, it's exactly that. Just know what you're trying to achieve. Have a vision as a producer, but be adaptive maybe with your commissioning partners. I mean, your co-producing partner is like your commissioner. You've just got two commissioners, and if that is something to sort of like hold fast to, is that if you're going to enter that relationship, that's what they are. They're two commissioners. And it's not always balanced evenly, so it's slightly different, but they are essentially you have two commissioners.
And know what you're getting into.
Know what you're getting into.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me today. I know you've all got a dash and seal more deals, so thank you so much for joining us. Okay, next up, we have a bona fide rock and roll star on telecast. Last week, I caught up with Guns N' Roses legend Slash and Richard from Buccaneer to discuss the dark thriller The Crow Girl, which is launching to the international market here in Cannes. Today, we're diving into one of the most exciting new dramas hitting the market, The Crow Girl, produced by Buccaneer for Paramount Plus and distributed internationally by ITV Studios. Based on the best-selling Scandinavian noir novel, this intense psychological thriller promises to captivate audiences worldwide. Joining me today are two key figures behind the project. First, we have Richard Tilkart, joint CEO of Buccaneer, whose vision and leadership, alongside Buccaneer's other CEO, Tony Wood, are driving this adaptation forward. And alongside him, we're thrilled to have rock legend Slash, who brings his unique creative talents as exec producer and musical contributor to the series. Richard, Slash, thanks both for being here. Great to see you.
Hi.
How are you? How are you doing, guys? Are you you're well?
All good. Yeah.
Excellent.
No, good.
Good. Okay, so let's dive straight in and talk about what makes The Crow Girl so special. It's based on a best-selling novel written by Erik Axel Sund, which is a pen name for two Scandinavians, Jerker Eriksson and Hakan Axlander. Can you give us a brief overview, Richard, of the show and the cast and what makes the story stand out?
Sure. So the show stars Eve Miles, Catherine Kelly, and Dougray Scott. There's so much to this show, but we've got a limited amount of time. So in short, the bodies of young men start stacking up in public places in the UK. And DCI Kirkland, played by Eve Miles, and Sophia Craven, played by Catherine Kelly, who plays a psychotherapist, come together in order to try and work out what's going on and find a murderer. So over 6 episodes in season 1, the implication being seasons 2 and beyond, of course, I've got to say that. There's a number of themes in cover-ups, in lies, in abuse, and many of these are themes that run through the police force. So as Kirkland and Craven get closer to uncovering who the murderer is, the murderer also gets much closer to us. I think it's the sort of combination of the storytelling, the writing. Millie Thomas, who's a superb writer of the show, along with a number of other writers in a room with her, the location, and of course the music.
Well, Slash, let's talk about the music. Well, actually, let's take a step back from that to the genesis of the project. So how did you first of all get involved in this? Because this is something you brought to Buccaneer and spoke to Buccaneer around originally.
Right. Well, so I've been in the sort of movie and TV producer sandbox for a few years. And I'm always looking for new material. And I went to my literary agent and asked her what she always give me new stuff and whatnot. And she came to me with The Crow Girl, and she said, "Got to read this. It's really good." And so I loved it. And she said there's a guy named Nicholas in Sweden who's sort of her counterpart, Swedish counterpart, and he's representing this book. So I got in touch with him, and we pursued selling it. And next thing you know, Buccaneer came up, and I'm very familiar with Buccaneer because they've got some shows I'm really fond of, and so they took an interest in it, and that's how it started.
Yeah. Well, they seem to be the perfect production partner.
I was so happy that, if nobody else had come to the table, just having them, be interested was great.
Yeah, of course, because Buccaneer are responsible for Crime and Marcella.
Yeah.
So what is it about, when you read the novel, what is it about the novel that, that really sort of sucked you in, if you like?
Right. Well, I'm a horror and thriller that's my bag. And this particular story had to have been one of the most darkest cop stories that I'd read in a long time. And it has a lot of, not until the very end do you really find out what's going on. It's a really great twisty tale, and the characters are great, and it's very original as far as the subject matter. I'm not going to get into that because the disassociative, all that stuff. Anyway, but so it's just one of those things that spoke to me.
Okay, and now MIPCOM, Richard, is obviously one of the most important markets in the world for television content. What makes The Crow Girl particularly suited to an international audience?
Well, I think it touches on a number of themes that is nothing to do with any one particular country, whether it's family, mental health, immigration, corruption at institutional level. And those things are always a good bedrock for anything that's going to sell around the world and be relatable. I mean, the key is it's got to be relatable. With any show, and at Buccaneer we always go on about this, any show, you've got to have emotion, you've got to have great acting, and that really comes in spades in this show with the cast that we've got and with Millie's writing and the response that the actors had to that. And so when it comes to how other countries view what they want to buy, whether it's in the English language or other languages, particularly if somebody is going to be watching a show in a foreign language, for many people English is a foreign language, and either they pick it up as a dub or a sub or whatever it may be, if the acting is good, the story is good, people see through all of that. It's a thing of the past now. I mean, Netflix really did a great job on allowing us to not be stuck to a show that is in our own language. And this show originated from Scandinavian writers and a Scandinavian book, and it's translated really well over to being set over here. But all of those points that I make about what makes a good show, if they're in there, and genuinely I feel they are in there in spades in this show, it comes through for any audience wherever they are. So I think ITV Studios will have a very easy time selling this. No pressure, ITV Studios.
Right. Well, it's a psychological police procedural thriller. And there's lots of complex material, as Slash mentioned, within the show. How do you go about adapting that for television and making it accessible? Or do you not? Do you not try and make it accessible? Do you just stick as close as you can to that source material?
I mean, the books are, it's a trilogy of books. I mean, in the US and UK, it was released as one book, but the book itself on first reading, Tony Wood, my business partner, and I really scratched our heads a little bit about how you go about adapting this for TV, because it did need a lot of work. And, Tony, along with Katie Barrett on our team at Buccaneer, went about pulling it apart with Millie Thomas and a team of female writers in a way that it was definitely the most complicated one we've ever done.
Yeah, it's a very dense book.
Yeah,
there's a lot of different stories all going on at the same time, and so I think Tony and Millie as well did a great job, sort of simplifying it enough so that it was easy to sort of put into episodes. You know?
Yeah. And I think equally at a moment in time where the industry is, it's had a rough ride. Whichever side of the business you're on, whether it's distribution, production, whatever, it's been a tough time, and a lot of people are playing safer bets at the moment than necessarily The Crow Girl is. So for Paramount and ITV Studios to see what it could be was refreshing. I mean, they've been great partners from the beginning, allowing us to and trusting us to take this story and do with it as we did, and having Slash as a partner and exec producer on it, and knowing what the music was going to be alongside Lorne Balfe, it plays a huge part in this show. More than most shows we've worked on, the music is a really important part.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the music, Slash. I mean, how did you approach writing and scoring? And let's talk about Lorne Balfe's involvement as well, and how you're both approaching the overall soundtrack.
I was really interested in the score, but at the same time, I knew that I didn't have time to commit to composing an entire score. So Tony introduced me to Lorne, and Lorne's done pretty much all of the Buccaneer programs. And so he and I got together, and he really he's phenomenal, and so he sort of took on the lion's share of scoring the entire show, and then I just started contributing pieces of music. So I would write on the road and then send them to him, and he would sort of find the right. I was just writing to the script, and he would write it into the scenes, and then there was a theme song that is really good that I contributed to as well. And so it was just, it's such a moody piece, and he put this great bedrock down for me to be able to sort of bounce off of and put my ideas into.
Yeah. So what it was interesting you say there, you were writing to the script.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even before you saw the script and actually thinking back to the actual novel, did you have a mood in mind?
Yeah, it's I get musical ideas from books and stories and as well as scripts. So I can read something and start to imagine a musical, sort of a melody for that. And that started pretty early on. So when I started working with Lauren, I had some definite ideas already.
And has that changed? Because presumably you're starting to see bits of the production now, and I know you've been on set. Has that changed your approach to the music as the project's developed?
It doesn't really change the melody so much, but I think more importantly, when I start to hear what the instrumentation is that Lauren's doing, then it starts to change the idea of the certain sounds that you're going to use. It's hard to explain, but and when you actually see something, you just start to get more ideas, or there's a little bit more depth to the ideas that you get.
Yeah. Okay. And will we ever will it see the light of day in its own right, do you think, maybe one day?
I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, the theme song is great, and I think I have a feeling that they're going to want to do something with that because it's a song in its entirety, and it's really cool. As far as the soundtrack to the show, that's hard to say, but we'll pitch for it.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, watch this space. Now, Richard, given the popularity of Scandi Noir in recent years, how does The Crow Girl fit into the Scandi Noir genre? Does it? I mean, obviously it does because it's come from a Scandinavian home and two amazing writers.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Look, there are nods to Scandinavian noir in it. I think that pulling it out of Scandinavia itself and over to the UK gives it a freshness, and Millie's writing gives it a freshness that I wouldn't label it a Scandi noir, but a fan of Scandi noir would love this. Yes. But I think it sits as at the end, it's a psychological crime thriller based around a police procedural that is unmistakably set in the UK with international themes. Yeah, you've got me on this one. I think there's nods to the noir area.
Yeah. Okay. So fans of Scandi Noir will enjoy it, but perhaps it's wrong to categorize it as a Scandi Noir.
Probably as a producer, you're going to say this, but I feel it's probably got a wider audience than necessarily Scandi Noir did. I think it goes beyond that. I could see my 80-year-old mum enjoying this, and she wouldn't enjoy Scandi Noir.
Right. Okay. Okay. Well, let's take the opportunity to have a quick look at The Crow Girl.
Hello? Are you there?
Traced a recruitment consultant in his early 30s, Steve Cooper, no record of any kind, on his way in now for interview.
Have we run the profile through MPU?
No one matching his descriptions has been reported missing.
No specific identifying characteristics to narrow down a search that wide. Don't know his heritage, could be fucking anyone.
Age?
16, 20 at a push.
We should contact Child Protection. See if he matches anyone. He might have just slipped through the cracks.
Why wouldn't anyone want to report their own child missing?
Well, it might be a foreign national.
Could be.
Or could be a refugee, holidaymaker, traveller, so...
Maybe they don't know they're missing at all.
What if he's vulnerable?
Well, of course he's vulnerable, Mike. He's dead and nobody's reported him missing. Right, I want all CCTV within half a mile radius. I'm talking buses, shops, camera doorbells, the works, okay? And you lot, I want you door knocking down Broad Street and Taylor Court, Corn Street. I need a full picture on this. Somebody has left a body in a public place. They want him found. I want to know why. See, the thing is, Lou, you know I'm going to ask to see that, and I know it's going to be a shit meme. Why would you interrupt a murder inquiry with a shit meme? Was it funny, Mike? Was it a shit meme, Mike?
I didn't get it.
Prick.
I didn't.
Okay, let's have a look.
I was just...
Let's have a look!
Okay, Jeanette, point made. Fuck's sake.
Oh, wow, look at that. Okay. Wow. Okay, well, explain it to him. I mean, that's how the best jokes work, right?
Mike, I swear to God. It's Carol Lowry. The dentist who was booked this morning for unholy amounts of child in porn.
Possession and distribution of child abuse images. No. That you were up to speed, Mike. Is that funny? No, it isn't, is it? You get used to him. And if you're going to interrupt me, at least make it fucking funny. Maybe swap out Instagram for news, okay? I want every inch of that bag checked, you understand?
Yeah. Forensics are doing tests as we speak. Eva said that the liquid on the bag is probably piss. Well, she said it smelled like piss anyway.
So the show obviously has these dark psychological elements to it, Slash. How do you think it's going to balance that intensity with entertainment as well? Because at the end of the day, you know, this is in an entertainment medium. And how will it entertain without perhaps overwhelming?
Well, I mean, the brilliance of this show is it is dark and foreboding in a lot of ways, but it's cast so well and the writing's so good. It's really entertaining. It's very engaging, and some of the subject matter is a little, it's a little disturbing, but it's sort of balanced out by the way that it's projected.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not off-putting.
Yeah.
Particularly, I think, you know, the characters played by Eve Miles and Dougray Scott, the writing has a bit of levity to both of those characters, and Eve and Dougray's comic timing is very good. I mean, it's certainly not a comedy, but the way they bounce off each other can sometimes pull you away from the dark subjects that Slash was referring to, which, you know, there is a few in there.
Yeah, and there's a lot of personal stories that are you know, going on at the same time. So it sort of gives a little bit of, it brings it home a little bit.
Yeah. So it's airing on Paramount Plus in early 2025. You touched on it earlier, Richard. Is there scope for further spin-offs or further series?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are left with an absolute whopper of a cliffhanger on the end of season one, and the stories from the books allow us to go further. I think if you wanted to go on and on with this, you could, but certainly it's left with viewers will be wanting a season two.
And Slash, so after The Crow Girl, are you planning any more TV and film projects? Is there something on the horizon for you?
I have a couple film projects that are in development, and one of them that's about to come out next year. So that production's done already. So I'm still, I'm very much into this. As far as TV is concerned, I was fortunate to, you know, be able to work with Buccaneer. It's really the first TV production that I've done.
And then finally, for the buyers watching this at MIPCOM, what would you say is the one admissible reason why they should buy The Crow Girl for their viewers?
Because it's good. It's really good, and it's the cast is great. It's really, like I was saying before, it's really well written. It's a very well thought out presentation. you know, it's very entertaining. I watched it all the way through up until it was finally edited and everything in colors, and I was like, this is really a good show. So there you go.
All right, you would watch it even if you weren't involved.
I've been watching it just for the enjoyment of watching it. You know, I've played it for a couple of people, my girlfriend at home and stuff like that. Go and check this out. You know, and it's really good. People who didn't know what it was or like that have seen it have been like, oh, this is amazing. Yeah.
All right, Slash, Richard, thank you so much for joining me on this week's special telecast for MIPCOM. Good luck with the show, and good luck to ITV Studios with selling it at the market.
Yeah. Cheers.
Thanks.
Thanks again to Richard and Slash for joining me. The Crow Girl is out in the UK on Paramount Plus in early 2025, and it's coming soon on 7 Network in Australia, and no doubt many more countries soon to be announced. My next guest today is Guy Bisson from Ampere Analysis, one of the industry's leading TV industry analysts. Guy is presenting some new research at MIPCOM, should I say, later in the week called Global Content Trends Making Sense of Uncertainty. I caught up with him earlier today for a quick preview of his findings. Hello, Guy. How are you doing?
Not bad, thanks. Glad to be back in Cannes.
Yeah, well, great to have you here. The sun is shining. You can tell that we're in obviously a very dark studio, but it's a beautiful day outside. So tell us first of all a little bit about Ampere Analysis. You're one of the leading analysts in the TV industry, and we often see reports and news stories coming out in the trade press about the state of the industry and trends that are happening in it. Tell us a little bit about the company and what your methodology is for that sort of research.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we have several methodologies, and the idea is to bring together different techniques to get a completely holistic picture. So we do consumer research. We ask people what they're up to, what they're watching. We do market research, so we track and forecast companies and company financials and subscriber growth. And then we do a huge amount around content tracking. So we track every TV show and every movie everywhere that it's appearing, whether that be a streaming service, a linear channel, a fast channel, an AVOD platform. And we can see all of the strategies around content, around licensing, around original production. And we also track shows as they go into development or series orders, so we can get that little window into the future of content as well.
Wow, I can imagine the sort of data set that you've got back at Ampere Towers is a pretty robust and detailed. Well, let's talk about the state of the content industry then. We've had the years of peak TV a few years ago. It kind of feels almost the diametric opposite right now. Just give us a brief overview of what you're seeing in terms of commissioning and the state of the market right now.
Yeah, I think stating the obvious, peak TV is over. That decline began at the end of 2022. But if we think about the last 4 or 5 years that we as an industry have experienced, it's a series of absolutely extraordinary events, all of which impacted content. Of course, there was COVID and the lockdowns. Then we had the streamers pulling back from investment when Netflix had a particularly bad quarter and lost 1 million plus subscribers. And that had a knock-on effect on the rest of the industry. And then, of course, last year we had the Hollywood strikes, which put another kibosh on production, not just in the US, but further afield. So all of those events triggered a series of declines that have led us to where we are today, and that is at a very low rate of commissioning activity, one of the lowest we've ever seen, even compared to COVID and other events. There are signs of life, but it's very difficult to discern where those signs of life are right now.
And so let's just delve into the reasons for that a little bit more. Now, you talked about the various major different events, but also we've seen advertising move away from the TV industry over the last few years and really move towards social media. Are we seeing that continuing, and do we expect that to increase as the years go forward?
Yeah, so social media advertising overtook TV as a revenue pot some years ago, and it's continuing to grow almost exponentially. I suppose the big change for the TV industry, if we think of streaming and classify streaming also as television, is that all of the major streamers have now moved into advertising. It's very easy to forget that 18 months ago that was not the case. Now, they have certain advantages potentially over social. Firstly, they are long-form professional programming that is shown generally watched on the big screen. They bring the best of both worlds. They have the reach of television. but they also have the ability to target. They have lots of data on their customers, and that's some of the advantages that social has had over television. So I think, yes, social is continuing to grow, will continue to grow exponentially according to our forecasts, and is going to be the biggest pot of spend. But streaming coming into that market is going to have a big impact as well, and they will start to take market share, both from television, but also, I think, from social media.
And well, yeah, let's talk about Netflix for a second, because I read recently that there are a lot of price rises happening internationally. There was they changed the way that people can share passwords, which had a big hike in terms of their profitability or their figures over the last year or so. We're now starting to see them increase prices around the world. I mean, is that... I'm trying to get a sense of, how effective their advertising offer is. Are many people taking up that advertising tier?
So at the moment, we're beginning to see that shift towards not quite majority, but a large portion of new customers are opting for that advertising tier. Netflix is very much at the beginning of its advertising journey. They've said themselves that they want an industry-leading low ad load, so they don't want too many interruptions around that premium programming that they have. And that will, of course, hold them back because they don't have the inventory that, say, a broadcaster would have in terms of the number of ad slots. And we're also seeing that in our data, that the ad load on Netflix is the lowest in the streaming industry at the moment by far. So I think they're taking it very slowly. They're learning as they go. They're not going to ramp up too rapidly in terms of the volumes of advertising, but they are using other innovative formats like pause ads, for example. So there are ways and means to get that advertising volume up without being too annoying to the end customer. And the customers are taking it. I mean, they were saturated in many of their markets. They had nowhere else to go. But advertising is allowing them to not just find potentially new customers, but bring back lapsed customers on a more attractive price point. So it's pretty important for their strategy going forward.
So let's come back and talk about the TV industry as a whole. You talked about, the commissioning levels are way down. I mean, in terms of your research, we know it's been the lowest since COVID, but in terms of further back, can you give us a sense of where we are now in terms of the commissioning levels over the last 10, 15 years?
Well, we went through basically a decade of very strong growth in commissioning activity, and that's what led us to peak TV. I mean, we talk about peak TV having ended 18 months ago, but we started talking about peak TV probably 8-9 years ago. So the commissioning activity was at a real high it was growing all the time, but it felt like peak TV for about a decade. And so to come off of that quite rapidly, as we have seen in basically 18 months, is a bit of a shock to the system. Obviously, capacity was grown during that time. There's been a soundstage and studio building boom. You'll have seen that in the UK and elsewhere. Now there are facilities, staff, crew and talent that don't have the commissions to work on. So it's a big shock to the system.
Yeah, I have noticed a number of studios being thrown up around the country, around the UK and probably internationally as well. And you're right, it seems to be by the time they're announced and by the time they're actually ready, the commissioning levels are so low that you wonder how positive that's going to be in terms of a business model for studio facilities. But talking about types of content then and the commissioning levels across scripted and unscripted, can you say which has been hurt most? Is it scripted because it's more expensive, simply? Or is it unscripted, which, a lot of people talk about the middle layer of unscripted being really hit? Can you give us a sense of that?
Yeah, so it's definitely scripted is harder hit. As you say, it's more expensive. We are seeing, when we look at the genres of what's getting commissioned, that some of those more expensive to produce genres like sci-fi are down against others. One of the areas where we are seeing a bit of an upswing and continues to be incredibly strong relative to being down is crime, and particularly true crime. The other thing that's happening in the market is a move towards unscripted, particularly by the streamers. So just again, 5-6 years ago, they didn't really have much activity in that space, and now it's a very significant area for them. And again, documentary within that is particularly hot, and within that, true crime documentary. And then we've got things like sport documentary and biographical that supports some of the other programming as the streamers move into sport.
So is it fair to say that premium true crimes documentary and premium factual is still an opportunity, almost a sub-niche within a sub-niche?
Yeah, I mean, unscripted is an opportunity. Again, within the confines of the market being down, documentary is the strongest sector at the moment within that space, and within that, crime is absolutely the majority of activity within that space. So there are things going on. I think partly it's part of all this wider web of development. So streamers moving into advertising means they're becoming more broadcast-like in their content strategy. So they're doing more unscripted. They're doing more series that will engage over a longer period, because when you're using advertising, you need people to keep coming back and watch week after week after week. So the old technique of dropping a box set of a premium drama that was binged in 48 hours doesn't work quite so well. And so the type of drama that they're looking for is the type of drama that's always worked on broadcast, which is longer running crime, procedurals, and that sort of show.
That's interesting. So actually the advertising aspect for the streamers is now impacting the way that they play out new content.
Yep, so we've seen what I'm calling the death of the box set. The possible exception is Netflix, but all the other streamers, the majority of their original content is now dropping on a weekly cadence, not as a box set.
Right.
Even Netflix is using that technique as well to some degree.
Yeah.
So this is all part of what you could call the broadcastification of streaming. And it's not just advertising, it's also the fact that they've moved from customer acquisition mode, where they needed to acquire brand new customers as fast as possible, to one of customer retention. And again, series and content that can keep people coming back week after week is better for retention. And it doesn't have to be the really expensive drama anymore that was the big headline grabbing, made people subscribe. Yes, they probably binged it, but you didn't care. Now we're moving towards, I must retain those customers long term, reduce my churn, and keep them viewing again and again and again.
Right. And now we spoke earlier on a co-production panel about all the different trends within the industry that producers and networks and distribution companies are facing. Going forward, what do you think the outlook for co-production is? Is it going to be? It's always been an important part of the market, but is it going to become crucial, really, going forward? Because less money in the market, the commissioners, they still need that amount of content, right? There's still a demand for a certain level of content. So the ability to do it cheaper or with more partners seems to me the most obvious, solution.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing anything that can mitigate risk. We're seeing it in the market. So co-production is one. We've also seen a return to licensing. So the streamers now are very active and very interested in licensing content, potentially into relatively short windows, which kind of went away for a while when it was all about original production kept on the platform in perpetuity. So certain types of content, drama that works and maybe fills a gap from that original production that's down, is very in demand in terms of licensing. And the reason that's important is because it kind of also opens the door to co-production, because if the commissioner, the streamer, is now willing to think about short windows, potentially also geographic licensing, then not having complete control or sharing the rights through a co-production becomes less of an issue. So I think we'll see return, or not return, but an upswing in co-production, big upswing in licensing for certain types of content as well. And we're also seeing streamers look for safety in other ways. So language is one way that they're looking at keeping things safe. We've seen an uptick in English and Spanish. Other languages are all down. So where before, there was lots of German, lots of Italian content maybe getting made because it could be used, now we're seeing a sort of retrenchment to those secure and safe languages that are very widely spoken.
Yeah, and obviously Spanish and the Hispanic market in the States, for example, and obviously South America and various other territories, that is purely a numbers game, isn't it? It's going to be more attractive to a wider number of people.
Yeah, and the other area actually that is kind of strong-ish is Asia.
Right.
And so thinking about co-production going forward, you need to think about where the drive for content is going to come from. And there's a very simple relationship. It's the markets where there's still growth and, of course, a big opportunity. And those markets are generally in Asia, to a lesser degree in the Middle East and Sub-Saharan Africa. That's still very, very small in terms of commissioning activity and co-production activity at the moment, but that will open up. And Asia will be a big driver, I think, for new relationships, new narratives and stories being brought to the wider audience, and of course, local content production as well to seed and drive that growth potential.
Interesting. So, so I know we're talking about commissioning levels being really, really low, and we don't want to talk too much about how doom and gloom the outlook is. Can you give us any sort of sense of opportunity going forward in the years ahead? I mean, for example, if you were a producer that had a scripted and an unscripted division, where would you be focusing your efforts right now?
So there are signs of life in the industry. It's not all doom and gloom. The first half of this year was actually quite strong, but that was off the back of the Hollywood strikes. This last quarter was down again, but year to date as a whole, we can start to determine some return to activity. At the moment, it seems to be largely driven by Netflix and Amazon, and also within that by unscripted over scripted. So certainly going forward, if I had to think about two divisions, unscripted is going to be probably the stronger one for the near-term future. Scripted is still important, but it's a certain type of scripted. So I think less of the very high budget, very high production value content, and more of the middle ground, more of that crime drama series also that can run not maybe for 6 or 8 episodes, but for 20 or 30 per season, as we see with the likes of CSI and other shows that are long-running shows on network television and have been quite successful also in streaming. So it's all about thinking, how do I make content, be that scripted or unscripted, that works on a weekly cadence and keeps people coming back every single week for an extended period of time. And that probably isn't a all bells and whistles fantasy drama of 6 episodes. It's going to be something else that works better for that sort of need that is now driving the market.
All right, so long-running true crime co-productions are probably, where the opportunity is.
Well, that is certainly an opportunity, but there will be others, and it's about finding them and watching the market, looking at the data, seeing where that upswing is coming from geographically, but also in terms of what's getting commissioned.
Yeah. And so, guys, so you're going to be doing a presentation with all of these findings and more. When's that?
So that is Thursday. If anyone's still going to be here on Thursday morning at 11:30 in the Producers Hub.
Okay, well, we look forward to seeing you there. Guy Bisson, thank you very much for being on Telecast.
Thank you.
Many thanks to Guy Bisson at Ampere there for his insight, and to all my guests for joining me for day one of our MIPCOM livestream 2024. Thank you also to our sponsors, ITV Studios and Shooting in Spain, a brand of ISEX Invest in Spain, for making the shows possible. Join us again tomorrow for more guests, analysis and news from the Palais. We'll be live from 1 o'clock Central European Time on YouTube and LinkedIn. Until then, goodbye for now.